Hello again, U.S. History class. Today we're going to start on Chapter 44, which is Imperialism. We're into our second week's worth of work here after your first week, which was frankly a little easy, mostly review. Time to speed it up a little bit. Imperialism is really important when we're talking about World War I and World War II. It is one of the key causes of really both conflicts in a lot of ways. So what is it? You already kind of know what this is. This is when nations go out and try and find, one, resources, and two, markets to improve their situation. We've talked about this. The U.S. conquered the West, as you talked about, for imperialist reasons. They built the Transcontinental Railroad to San Francisco with the purpose of getting a route to China so that we could unload goods in China. We've talked about this stuff, so none of this should be new. But at the turn of the century, we start to take imperialism a little bit more seriously. So over the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about the specifics of some of these things. So the ones I've got today are really kind of late 19th century imperialism. Obviously, we know the West. I'm not going to belabor that point because you know all about it. We did that. But what I'm going to focus on is Alaska, Hawaii, and Japan today. Okay, so Alaska. How does this very large, very cold, fishy piece of land come into American possession? What happens is the Secretary of State, a guy by the name of William Seward, made a deal with the Russians, approved by the Senate and paid for eventually by the House, to buy Russia's largest colonial possession, i.e. Alaska, from them for about $7 million. People at the time thought this was absolutely insane. Turns out to be one of the best deals we've ever made, given that Alaska turned out to be full of fish, timber, oil, gold, silver, platinum, about a dozen other things that are really kind of important and valuable. Maybe not a lot of fun to live there, but it is a fantastic place to make money, and the U.S. got it for what the cost of a decent center fielder for a season. So that's not too bad. That's not a real controversial addition. There haven't been a lot of fights over that. The odd Russian politician will get up in front of their parliament and scream and yell about how they want it back, but that's never going to happen. So let's move on to Hawaii. Hawaii is a little bit different. First, let's talk about why anybody would want Hawaii. Okay, yes, it's nice and tropical, whatever. That's down the road. Vacationers aren't really going there yet because of that whole yellow fever thing. The reason you want Hawaii is two things. One, you can stop there on the way to China. Fair enough, we got that. You need to refuel ships. It makes the trip a lot faster, a lot cheaper. Got that. Second, it also produces coffee and sugar. These are things that can't be produced in the United States. We've sort of hinted at some of this stuff anyway, the interest in these tropical locations. Okay, great, you got that. How does the U.S. get a hold of it? Well, rather embarrassingly, U.S. planters, wealthy U.S. people start to migrate there in the mid-1800s to cash in on the coffee and sugar industry. And so very quickly, a large chunk of the island ends up owned by non-Hawaiians. After a little while, these owners more or less get together and say, we don't really like being ruled by a Hawaiian queen. Why don't we just get rid of her? And they essentially drove her out of power with a little bit of help from the U.S. Navy and immediately asked to join as a territory. Not our finest hour. The queen would end up dying in exile, but it does make for a very nice place to go on vacation, and the coffee is excellent, no question. So that's how we get a hold of Hawaii. It becomes a very important thing. Pearl Harbor Naval Base, which will be famous in World War II as being the first place attacked by the Japanese, becomes a hugely important part of protecting our supply train to China. There was always a concern that other countries' navies would try and take our ships. By putting naval bases in Hawaii, we go a long way towards protecting that. Okay, we got that. Now, Japan's the next question. Now, we never controlled Japan. We never colonized Japan. Interestingly enough, Japan's a bit of another case. In the 1850s and 60s, the U.S. starts to send naval expeditions to Japan, and they find a closed society. The Japanese had a brutal civil war in the 1600s. They closed off their society after the end of that war, and they really did not allow foreigners in, largely because foreigners had made the war a lot worse by bringing a lot of guns to everybody involved in the Civil War. The problem with closing your society is you tend to stop progression. You don't bring in new ideas, you don't bring in new goods, you don't get new stuff happening, and they lock their society in basically a late medieval period. What happened was when the U.S. Navy sails into Edo Harbor, which is now Tokyo Harbor, and fires a salute, the Japanese realize they are hilariously outgunned. And are forced after a couple of years to make some deals with the United States to buy U.S. technology. But one of the things that they did was they also hired as many Americans as they could get to come in, and Brits and French, by the way, to come in and train their people in all this new industrial technology. The Japanese managed to pull off a very short-term transformation, going from a medieval society to a modern industrial society in the span of about 30 years. And by the turn of the century, they are ready to start invading other countries like Korea and China, which they do. This would, again, eventually lead to World War II, the war in the Pacific with the United States, the long-running war with China. That was all part and parcel of this. But it's interesting that really what's responsible for starting that change is really the Japanese realizing how badly outgunned they are when they make those initial contacts with American warships. And this sets a process in motion that would change Japan forever. Japan also becomes eventually a friendly harbor for U.S. ships to stop in on the way to China. That makes it a little bit easier. Every harbor we can get along the way, the better. It makes the trip cheaper and easier. So next time we're going to talk about some other acquisitions. Please, guys, stay safe. Keep up with the work. Text me, email me with questions, whatever you need, and I will do my best to do it for you, and we'll all get through this together. All right, have a good day.